FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
And it's only been really since the turn of the millennium that there's been a massive assault on the heterosexual majority as well. And that's taken the form, of course, of abstinence education, especially, but also increasingly a war on even things like masturbation and fantasy, and a new policing also of marital sex. And three things have been incredibly successful for the religious right. One is the promise of pleasure. You could think of the religious right as the illegitimate child of the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s. They promise spectacular marital orgasms for the rest of your life if you only follow their rules. They're called Soulgasms. Everyone will be jealous when I describe them. they're like, it's the physically intense orgasms plus emotional connection with the spouse, plus the presence of God in the bedroom. Not everybody wants the third thing, but the first two sound pretty good to most people. And they'll have many women's testimonials in the Christian sex advice books that I spent the last few years having to read, talking about how it feels like sliding down a mountain waterfall, or a million tiny pleasure balloons exploding inside of me all at once. There are now Christian vibrator sites on the internet. Any child can access them. There's incredibly lasciviously graphic sex advice available in any Barnes & Noble. There's a recommendation for spanking and bondage and anal sex also for heterosexuals on the very same sites that are hostile to non-marital sex and to homosexuality. So we cannot understand, no repressive movement succeeds without promising its adherents pleasure. That's really important to grasp, that they promise pleasure. The other thing is, of course, the issue of secularization. They have taken over the language of physical health, right, wildly exaggerating the dangers of disease and lumping curable and incurable diseases together, bearable and unbearable ones, while casting aspersions on condoms. But above all, they have taken over the language of psychological health, of therapy speak. Basically, repression has been repackaged as the promotion of mental health. Anywhere you look, any sex-related topic is now about self-esteem. If you sleep around, it's a sign of low self-esteem. And in fact, it will cause even lower self-esteem. You know, virgins have better life outcomes. Youthful relationships are simply mutual using. The Bush administration in 2006 mandated that any sex education curriculum, and at that point 46 of the 50 states took federal money, must communicate the information, and I put that in quotes, that non-marital sex can lead to depression and suicide. We've been lying to our young people. It's not just that we're withholding information, we are actively trying to reshame all sex outside of marriage, and especially female sexuality. And the third thing is that the religious right has been very effective on playing on elemental fears. Fears especially about the death of post-marital desire. And it's no coincidence that they've been so successful in the era of Viagra and the era of the explosion of internet porn, because those changes in the sexual landscape have unleashed an avalanche of insecurities about the relationship between sex and love, performance and intimacy, desire and closeness, and basically they have inserted themselves right away. Liberals have been left speechless, and the conservatives are ever more explicit. There have been 3 million anti-masturbation books sold in the United States since the year 2000. They're not directed at teenage boys, but at married men, trying to redirect their desire away from internet pornography and masturbating to the computer towards their flesh and blood wives. Some of these may have been coerced sales and Bible study groups, but a lot of that suggests to me that there's an ocean of marital pain out there, and religious conservatives are exploiting it. There's been an incredible campaign on the part of pharmaceutical companies to try to match the success of Viagra by finding a pink Viagra for women. They've created a new disease category called female sexual dysfunction. It doesn't exist, but it's felt by many people to be real, which includes lack of desire, lack of arousal, difficulty reaching orgasm, and dissatisfaction with inadequately intense orgasms. This is a large market niche. And this has allowed, again, conservatives to play on the ambivalences left behind by the sexual revolution. Anxieties about, is it the drug turning my partner on, or does he really want me? Is it the fantasies in his head, or does he really want me? And in fact, of course, you know, do I want him? And there's been policing of people's emotions and a worry about the relationship between sex and love that the religious right has known how to exploit. So that now the argument for abstinence, again a secular one, is that premarital chastity will make marital sex infinitely hotter. Those things are very hard to argue against. And I think that one thing that progressives need to do, aside from mobilizing and addressing many different constituencies, is to get more comfortable saying that sex is okay. You will not find a Democratic politician defending sex outside of marriage, even though 95% of Americans have engaged in it, and the vast majority know in their hearts that it's made their marriages stronger.